Hello, everyone, and I'm really pleased to be here. Some of you I might have met in person at Bendigo or on the interweb somewhere at a different webinar. I'm always pleased to be asked to talk about things, and I hope that you'll learn a lot today. I just want to say that I'm on Wurundjeri country, so a little bit of different country to yours, and at the moment it's Warung season or wombat season here, and it's been great because there's a wombat who's been walking up and down our street ever since wombat season began, just nibbling at the green grass and basking in the sun, which is exactly what happens. So it's been really cool. I'll keep going. During this session, I'm going to be going over quite a lot of information fairly quickly, but you will be able to watch a recording and also you'll be able to get a copy of these slides. So hopefully anything that you want a little bit more about, you can go back on. And as Julia said, we'll have a few questions at the end and I can stay a bit longer as well. During this webinar, I'm just going to move that so I can read better. We're going to be looking at, first of all, how things you can do to the building around you can help you stay warmer and cooler, because it's such an important place to begin when you talk about comfort. But then for the majority of the session, we'll be looking at efficient heating appliances and talking a bit about which are the most efficient and things you might think about. We'll spend a little while on efficient cooling, although it's really not in anyone's minds at the moment. And we'll talk a bit about rebates and resources as well. So to get started, I always think about comfort and efficiency at home as being around three key things. One is the building shell that I just mentioned, which is it's basically about how well it keeps the heat out in summer and how well it keeps our needed heat inside in winter. Then there's the appliances and how efficiently they actually do what you want them to do. So if they're heaters, how well do they do it? And then how you use both of those things, because you can have really efficient appliances and a good building shell, but use them in a very inefficient way. So you want to think about all of these three things when you're thinking about comfort. And to give a basic overview of the building shell, to me, the best description is the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. And what that's talking about is the more you can improve the building shell, then you're not even going to need to pay to use a heater or a cooler, which is, of course, the best option there is. These charts show how much heat can be lost through a building shell in winter and how much can be gained in summer. You'll see that ceiling, wall and underfloor insulation account for a lot of that heat loss in winter. And in another area is air leakage, which can be up to 25%, which is massive really if you think about it, and windows up to 20%. So we'll cover these very briefly, but there are other deep dive sessions in this series that look at each of those in more depth. With the building shell, the first thing I would always say is figure out where you're spending your time, and then whatever money or efforts you have to give, focus them on that area and make that area really comfortable. You can always work out to other areas of the home once you get the time and energy, but just focus on at least making one area really comfortable. And if you aren't able if you don't have separate areas, is there a way you could create some smaller areas to focus on? That's called zoning. Draft proofing is the next one, and everyone knows about draft proofing, but it still can be a little confusing. There was a deep dive session on draft proofing that you'll be able to look back at the recording of, but this image just shows how many drafts there really can be in a home. It's not just the real obvious stuff, it's things you might never have considered. And what you're trying to do is block the air from physically being lost out of your home or moving into it. Then insulation, that's whether it's ceiling, walls or underfloor. What you're trying to do is put in a material, insulation, that traps air in little pockets, and that stops heat moving through it. So it stops it being lost in winter and gained in summer. Of all of those, ceiling insulation is the most important to have because it has the biggest impact in both seasons. Then there's window treatments, that's the coverings inside. And what they do is reduce the amount of air that's crossing across the glass, and that air touching the glass is what drops off heat or picks up heat. So once you stop that airflow, you reduce that movement of heat. Then there's glazing upgrades. Everyone's heard of double glazing, but there are actually lots of ways you can achieve a similar result. All you need to do is add an air gap between two panels, and that will reduce the amount, the ability of heat to move in and out through that glass. And last but not least, in summer, really, we need external shading to stop us heating up so much. Anything you do inside can help a bit, but really when there's direct sun coming through a window, no matter what curtains you have, it's still going to heat up your house. So the best idea is to put external shading up of any shape, size or form to stop the sun touching that glass. Okay, let's look at appliances. We call them active because um, we're not just passively stopping heat moving, being lost out of the house. For example, in winter, we're actively running an appliance, burning some sort of energy and creating heat or moving heat. Why is heating such an important thing for all of us in Victoria? Well, part of it is that it is the biggest portion of our annual energy cost inside the home by a long shot. This chart says 43%, but often it can be a lot higher than that. And that's why it's so important for us to first improve our building shells so they're not losing the heat we generate, but also to have an appliance that generates heat really well. If you look at this chart, it's from a fantastic website called Rewiring Australia that I recommend highly that you go and have a look at. It shows different kinds of heating devices and what their cost would be to run. And you can see these ones, I think I've got a pointer thing here. These ones over here on the right, they're the reverse cycle air conditioners in a house that either does or doesn't have solar panels on the roof. But you can see that they're cheaper by so much than any other kind of heating. And that's why we're always recommending people put in reverse cycle air conditioners as heaters. They're known as many names, so don't get confused when you hear somebody talking about a split system. What they mean is a reverse cycle air conditioner or a heat pump, they might say, because reverse cycle units are heat pumps. They use heat pump technology, and they also use inverter technology, which is why some people call them inverters. But really, at their core, they are heat pumps. Why are heat pumps so incredibly energy efficient? It's important to understand this because when we talk about having all electric homes, what we really should be saying is efficient electric homes. We're not suggesting people get off gas and then just go to sort of old-fashioned plug-in electric heaters, because that really would be very expensive. We're talking about getting off gas and moving to efficient electric heating, efficient electric hot water heating, those sort of things. And the way we can do that is with heat pumps. These charts show, so on the left side, you've got, say, a plug-in electric heater of any kind. You will draw a kilowatt of electrical energy and it will turn that into heat energy, and it will give you the same amount roughly of heat energy out as the energy you put in. Whereas a heat pump turns this all on its head. Instead of generating heat from that energy, it's using some energy to run a fan around refrigerant coils, and then that technology can pull free heat out of the air that's around that unit and then move that heat into wherever we want it, which might be in our homes. For that reason, they can move a whole lot more heat into our homes than what a plug-in heater could generate. They're not generating the heat, they're moving it, collecting it, free heat that's already there and moving it. We already have heat pumps in our homes and have had for a long time. If you have a fridge or a freezer, they are also heat pumps. And now we've added the really common reverse cycle air conditioner, but the image on the right is the heat pump hot water system that's becoming well known now as well. If you want to choose a reverse cycle air conditioner, you've got three main configurations of how it might look. The first is the one most people know, which is just the individual unit. It has an indoor header unit and an outdoor condenser unit. They can just, they've got lots of benefits. They're the most efficient. Also, you can just install them as you need to. So you've got a bit of a break on your budget. You don't have to do every room at the same time. They're amazing for comfort control because each one can be completely different. Like one room could be on one temperature and the room next door a different one. One of the cons is that if you have a fair few zones you want to heat or cool, then you're going to have quite a few outdoor units. And some people don't really have the space for that. Others, it's not a problem. Also, if you're switching from something that does do multiple zones and you want to have multiple zones and use the rebate, the Victorian government rebate, you'll get less rebate total if you put in a series of individual units than if you put in something like a multi-head system. Now, multi-head is pretty much the same as the individual, except that the outdoor unit is connected to multiple indoor units. They're not ducted, and each of them have their own remote control. So you've still got that really personalised comfort. But you have only one outdoor unit, which means less space with outdoor units. Of course, the con of that is that if it breaks, you've got no heating or cooling because there's no backups. But often people will actually combine a multi-head like this and put that in all the bedrooms, and then maybe put one large individual system in a combined living, kitchen, dining area. So that's a really good combination to do as well. And the third option is a ducted system. So this is just like a gas ducted heating system, except that it's reverse cycle. It's the same heat pump technology, and it will come out of either floor or roof vents, just like the other kinds of ducted systems. People will often choose these because either because of the look, because they don't want indoor, boxes on the walls, or because they want the whole home to be comfortable all at once. But this definitely comes at a cost. A ducted system will always be less efficient. Part of that is because of the ducts themselves. When you're generating heat in one place and then sending it through a duct to another place, you're just going to lose heat along the way. There's no way around that. It also means you're going to be heating and cooling more space than you would otherwise, just because of the way ducted systems work. And there's also less comfort control, because imagine if you've got one thermostat and you've got the whole system on that temperature, but half of the house is west facing and getting all this afternoon sun and the other half is not. Those rooms are going to need a different temperature, but you can't give it that. I'll talk a little bit more about ducted heating and the way that it should work, because I think this is really important to understand if you're trying to work out what to do. So these are from Efficiency Matrix, another fantastic website that have lots of informational videos. The correct use of ducted heating is that, I'll use my little pointer again. So this is the outdoor burner. This is a gas ducted heating system, but whichever one it is, it's basically generating warm air, which is flowing into the house. And then this here is the return air. And the same amount of air needs to leave here and go into the house as has to be pulled back in there, so it can go back to the main unit and reheat. You'll notice that all of these doors are open, and they have to be, because if you shut them, the heat does its thing, comes out here, but gets trapped. Meanwhile, the return air here is saying, hey, where's my air? I need my air so I can take it back and reheat it. It can't get it, so then it starts to pull air in through gaps and cracks and places where you don't want air to come from, because it's cold outside air. And this ends up in an unbalanced system, because you can imagine the people in those rooms are going to get too hot, whereas the people in this open area are going to be too cold. If you do have a zoned ducted system, which is more common, they're better because you've got a few more options, but there are still issues. In this case, this zone 2 is the one that the return air is in. This is the return air here. So you could run just zone 2, that would be great. But say you wanted to run zone 1, you would only be able to run zone 1 by having the door open to zone 2 and also heating zone 2, because that's where the return air is. Likewise, if you wanted to heat zone 3, you could heat that, but you'd also have to be heating zone 2 because that's where the return air is. So this is just so you understand how that works. It's not possible to get a system and just heat a bedroom because it all depends where the return air is located. Now, here's the $1 million question that gets asked all the time. If you've got ducted gas heating, can you just take the gas thing away and put on a reverse cycle unit? There has been a bit of a hubbub about this recently because Braemar put out their Dominator series that is designed to take the place of a gas burner. However, there are actually, if you look at their frequently asked questions, there are many conditions in which case it's not going to be possible. One is that I should explain why. The biggest reason is because gas ducting, gas units generate a high level of heat, so it's hotter, and so the ducts can be smaller. Whereas reverse cycle heaters, they generate more air that's less hot, so the ducts should be bigger. What this means is that if you've got any sort of older system with small ductwork, it's just not going to transmit enough warm air from the reverse cycle unit to make the room warm. The other thing is if any of the ducts or joins are older or uninsulated, they're not allowed to install it. And if there's no filter on the return air, they also have to replace all the ductwork anyway. So really, even if you could put something on your system, say if you had 10-year-old ductwork, you could potentially put on one of these Braemar Dominators, but I still wouldn't. First of all, because the ductwork is 10 years old, so it's going to start degrading if it's not already. And also, it's a ducted system, so you're still better off in terms of efficiency in getting something else, but it is there as an option. Okay, some more things you would think about would be the location of the indoor and outdoor units. If you don't like the wall mounted units, these ones, you can get ceiling mounted. They're called ceiling cassettes, or floor mounted. They're just called floor units. And if you're doing some building or renovating, you can sort of hide them away in bulkheads, and then you've just got a vent where the heat comes out. With the outside unit, the main things you want to be thinking about is that they're not in your way. The picture on the left is just one I found, and I thought, well, I would not want my air conditioner to be there because it's right by the front door and it's noisy and you might want to hang out there. Apart from not being in your way, you also want to consider that they do have a bit of noise. They also really need high airflow. So on the roof is fine, under an open deck is fine. You don't want to have them like the right-hand side picture. First of all, because you need air movement, but also you need to be able to get to them to be able to service and maintain them. A few more things that you would be considering are what size. Now, there's a really sort of generic sizing that a lot of air conditioner installers might use, where they basically say, this room is 30 cubic meters, therefore you need this size air conditioner. The problem with that is that it takes no account whatsoever of how thermally efficient your building shell is, or in other words, how well does your building shell keep warmth in. If you've done lots of things to help it keep warmth inside, you might need half the size reverse cycle air conditioner because it just does, all that heat doesn't get lost. Whereas if you've got the opposite and you've got huge floor to ceiling windows and hardly any insulation and lots of drafts, you're going to need to totally oversize a system to try and keep up. So you do want to think about both things. First of all, what can you do to your building shell to keep that air in, and then try and size one properly. You don't want to have one. You don't want to choose a small size, thinking it will be better to have small because that might motivate you to do other things. If it's too small, it's just going to run at full steam all day. It's going to blow all the time, and it might still never really get to where you want it to. For example, a house I was in the other day, it had a terrible thermal envelope, so the building shell, and she was setting the air conditioner to 24 degrees, which is way higher than the optimal, but it was still only, I think it was 15 degrees when we're in there. And she said it just runs morning till night. It never cycles off, and that means it's too small for what it's trying to do, or which is not necessarily its fault. It's also because the building shell is just not keeping the air in. In terms of star ratings, the most important thing to know is that in 2020, the star ratings changed. So before that, we just had one lot of star ratings for all locations, whereas in 2020, that changed to climate zoned star ratings. And we are now in this cool climate zone. So before 2020, if we had a 5 or 6 star air conditioner, that was brilliant. After 2020, that same exact air conditioner would now have a 2 or 3 star rating. So if you have a 2 or 3 star rating, that's actually a really good air conditioner. Yeah, that's the main thing to know, because sometimes people felt like, oh, I can only get 2 or 3 stars, it's no good. But yeah, just consider that difference, that is the equivalent of a much higher star rating previous to the change. With warranty, you want to get the longest warranty you can. As of February the 1st this year, to get products installed under the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme, they're required to have a 5-year minimum manufacturer's parts and labour warranty with Australian contact details, which is excellent. That didn't exist before that. Some units offer a 7-year warranty. I think it was Toshiba and there was one other. So that's even better. Cost and rebates. The main rebate for this product, the reverse cycle air conditioning, is the Victorian Energy Upgrade rebate, a state government rebate. The rebate amount will depend on a few things. Important things are what your original system was that you're taking out and what you're putting in. So you'll get the rebates are based on what the efficiency improvement will be compared to what you had and what you're putting in. So if you have something really inefficient, like an ancient gas ducted heating system, and you're putting in multi-head reverse cycle system, you'll get a really good rebate because that's the biggest change. Also, where you're located makes a difference. Melbourne would be all the same. Probably around Bendigo and other areas would be different because it's different summer and winter climate. And the other big difference is who installs the system, which we'll cover in just a sec. First of all, the ballpark outlay. If you had a gas ducted system and you were moving to, say, a multi-head system with 4 units, you'd expect to still pay about $8,000 out of pocket after the rebates. That's if you go for the better kind of installer that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Reverse cycle ducted, maybe 10 grand-ish, just depends. And then new installations, just a single individual unit for a bedroom, say, should be about $1,600, and that's based on about $800 to buy it and $800 to install it-ish. Which installers can give you the rebates? It's a little bit complicated, so I'm going to try and spell it out. The program is the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program. And what they've done is said, we're going to give different products a rebate, and we'll give it in the form of a Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificate. And different products have different rebates. To manage this whole program, they've created accredited providers, and their job is to is to collect all the evidence and say, yes, this person has taken away this gas ducted heater, they've put in this accredited unit, and they're eligible to get these rebates, and here's the money. Then what happened, this is where it becomes tricky, is because out of those accredited providers, some of them have decided to also install whatever product gets a rebate. What this means is that any time the government decides a new product is going to be rebated, these accredited provider type 1 will jump on board and go, okay, we're going to install this thing. What tends to happen is, because they're not professionals in installing any of this stuff, so they just subcontract the work to other people who don't have the same loyalty, they don't have the same customer control over what those contractors are doing. They'll also stop installing it as soon as the rebate ends, and they're really aiming for low cost, high turnover sales. So if anyone has ever called you and said, the government is giving away free or very cheap things, they will be one of these people. Now, the other option, though, for you, and what I would recommend, is going with the installer option 2. What that is there's accredited providers that don't install products. They just do what they were designed to do, which is manage these certificates. And instead, they say, look, there's already great companies that are already installing these products. Let's make a link with them. They'll provide us with the documents we need, and we in turn will give them the rebates for their customers. So if you can choose one of them, I would. I know that at least one person from Bendigo has already contacted me and said, we're an independent installer here in Bendigo and we can offer the rebates. So the good thing about the independent installers is, first of all, they've often been around for a long time and their specialty is whatever they're doing. Like if they're heating and cooling specialists, they've been working with people for a long time to get good heating and cooling options for houses. So they're likely to choose something that's really good for you as opposed to something that's going to have the most amount of certificates associated with it. As an example, what I mean is, if you have quite a small place, you might be able to have one large reverse cycle air conditioner unit, and that might be enough when you open doors for the whole house. But these guys might be saying, no, you need a ducted system. That's going to be the best for you. And it's not the best for you. It's just that it has higher VIG certificates, which they're trying to push you towards. I could keep talking about the differences, but I might keep going because I held us up a bit with my tech issues. Feel free to ask more questions about that, though. If you are not yet in a position that you want to actually install something else or upgrade something, it's always worth just thinking about starting at the start, which is heating your body. And these are also a really great complement to other types of heating. And by this, I'm talking about personal heating devices, which are just things that warm us. Ones that everyone knows are the wheat bag, the hot water bottle, the electric blanket. But these days you can get heated pads this one is the one that I have on my office chair and I sit on it and it's beautiful and warm. It can also be used as a heated foot pad if you're someone who gets cold feet while you're at a desk. You can get blankets, vests, all sorts of things. So they're a great option, and they're also perfect for when there's one person in your house that gets colder than the others. That way you can keep the thermostat of the heating lower and just have one of these for the person that gets really cold. Another option is a plug-in electric far infrared heater. Now, these aren't suitable in all areas. They're particularly for small areas or where people are stationary. So this picture on the right is over a desk where someone's sitting, and these ones can be moved to go right in front of someone. The best way to describe them is, imagine it's a cold, sunny winter's day, which is a bit like what it is here today, actually, and you go and stand outside in the sun. You feel warm because the sun's rays are hitting you, but it's freezing outside. This is what these do. They don't heat the air, they heat whatever they their rays hit. So if you have one, say, mounted over your couch where you watch telly, you and the couch will get warm, but the air between you and the roof won't. Just a quick note about the heating and rental standards. If anyone is a renter, there are rental standards that are going to get better. At the moment, you have to have an efficient heating device in your main living area. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of things that are included in that, some of which are good and others are less good. I won't read all the details here, but you can look back on it. The good news is when the regulations change, which should happen in the next year or so, rental providers will be required to put basically a reverse cycle air conditioner with at least a 2-star rating in a home, and that is an efficient option. So that's good. Now, with cooling, the best way to start is just with fans. Even though they're not actually cooling the air, they do cool you. They give you a 3-degree cooling effect. And they're actually a really good option to combine with heating. If you put them on winter mode and run them, they'll actually reverse direction and push air into the room, into the roof, which will displace any warm air that's gone there. So particularly if you have high roofs, high ceilings, put in reversible ceiling fans and use them in winter. But yeah, in summer as well. If you happen to have evaporative cooling, which is the unit pictured on the left, they are energy efficient. They can use a lot of water. The other thing is they're limited when it's really humid or very hot. So personally, I wouldn't be advising someone to install one these days, but if you already have one, then by all means keep using it. Oops, sorry, I forgot the second part of that slide, which is just the reverse cycle air conditioner. We've already talked about it a lot for heating, and they're also a very efficient way of cooling. Use them along with fans and just, yeah, as this next slide shows, keep cleaning the filters. The picture on the right is really dirty, dusty air conditioner filters. They're very easy just to pull out. You flip up, open the front of them usually, pull those out, wash them with warm soapy water, let them dry and put them back in. And that can incredibly improve the way they're working for you. A few other behavioural things just to set the thermostat. 18 to 20 in winter is good. So the idea is that you're dressing for the season. If it's winter, have a jumper on inside. And then if you set the thermostat at 18 to 20, it should be completely comfortable. In summer, you'll be aiming for 24 to 26. Again, you don't want to have to wear warm clothes in summer. You just want it to be manageable. Heating by zone, we've mentioned. The smaller the zone, the better. Cleaning and servicing appliances. If you happen to have solar energy, then preheat during those peak solar generation times. And anything you do to your building shell will it will reduce your heating and cooling costs. There's a few more links. I've written them out in full so that you can type them in yourselves and have a look at some more information. If you do want to get some quotes, then if you possibly can, I would go with a Type 2 installer, which is going to be someone in your local area that is already established as a heating and cooling specialist and has a good reputation. And just check that they can claim the rebates for you, but most of them can. They're not going to be as cheap as the accredited providers that do installations, because mostly they won't touch the products that those other accredited providers will offer. They're basically a cheap, nasty product. The Type 2s, the ones that are in your neighbourhood, then they're only going to be choosing things that they know are decent quality and are going to have a bit of a lifespan because they want to protect their reputation. So you won't get the cheapest thing, but you will get something that's going to last longer, and you've got someone there to back you up if you need to. Webinars. There's been some webinars, and there are also more webinars to come. I'm sure you've all got these this image for yourself. So I encourage you to attend whatever you possibly can.